Charles Jenkins is a famous gospel musician, composer, and pastor noted for his stirring songs and influential ministry leadership. Born in the U.S. on December 14, 1975, Jenkins has made a significant impact on the Christian faith community and the gospel music industry. Jenkins has an inspiring life narrative that begins with a spiritually grounded childhood and continues with his success as a gospel performer and pastor. He wants to utilize his talents to encourage and inspire people, which is a reflection of his religious background. It was more than a pastime for him. Music and worship were his life. Charles Jenkins responded to the calling that would propel him to prominence as a gospel musician and church leader by enrolling in a seminary. Among the nation's most esteemed theological institutions, he attended Chicago, Illinois' Moody Bible Institute. Jenkins valued this instruction highly because it provided him with From 2000 to 2019, Charles Jenkins was the exceptional senior pastor of Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago. His reputation stems from his solid theological education and the knowledge and abilities necessary for pastoral leadership. The church's membership and community outreach both increased dramatically under his leadership. After stepping down as pastor of a much-loved church, the illustrious Reverend Clay Evans Jenkins oversaw a remarkable growth in the congregation's impact and continued the legacy of its revered founder. It was not an easy task to succeed Reverend Clay Evans Jenkins, who was more than just a pastor. Edwards was the visionary behind Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. Because of his influential preaching, civil rights work, and influence on so many people's lives, Reverend Evans became a famous and revered figure in the Chicago religious community. The church he established bears his unmistakable imprint. It would be difficult for anybody to follow in his spiritually inspired footsteps, thanks to his magnetic presence, powerful leadership, and solid foundation. Jenkins took over a church that was doing well when he became senior pastor in the year 2000. Charles Jenkins, upon becoming the new pastor of Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, had the formidable task of gaining the respect and devotion of a congregation that had been deeply faithful to Reverend Evans. Doing so with modesty and vision, he acknowledged the monumental influence of his predecessor, but also resolved to carve out a unique path for himself as a leader. As the new representative of Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, he was successful in large part because he could honor the church's history while still planning for its future. During Jenkins' tenure as pastor, the church saw unprecedented growth. Increased participation and notable achievement of his was the growth in church membership. The welcoming environment, dynamic worship sessions, and beneficial community programming attracted more members. Another major lure was Jenkins' charismatic preaching style, which allowed him to relate to listeners from various walks of life. It significantly impacted the number of new members brought into the church. People in need were provided with food, clothes, school materials, and job training through initiatives that Jenkins oversaw. The goal of these initiatives was to empower individuals and families via the proclamation of God's love and the provision of tangible assistance. Through attending to the community's spiritual and material needs, Jenkins bolstered the church's position as a shelter of hope and encouragement in times of hardship. The activism of Reverend Clay Evans, whose work he admired, shaped his views on social justice and the importance of community service. By advocating for equality, justice, and constructive change in Chicago, Jenkins carried on this heritage. Beyond his role as a pastor, he became an advocate for the city's most marginalized residents, joining forces with other influential figures to address systemic issues that disproportionately affect them. In his ministry, Charles Jenkins was not hesitant to attempt new things. To adapt to the shifting dynamics of church participation in the digital era, he made use of innovative tools and methods to reach more people. To reach both churchgoers and non-churchgoers, he made use of digital communication tools such as social media and live streaming platforms. Not only that, but Charles Jenkins is also Mark in his dual roles as a gospel music business heavyweight and pastor. He seamlessly transitioned from leading a church to overseeing gospel music thanks to his profound devotion to worship and profound message that resonated with people across the globe. Charles Jenkins officially entered the gospel music industry in 2012 with the publication of his debut album, The Best of Both Worlds. Jenkins was a reflection of his. He yearned to fuse contemporary gospel with more traditional aspects, and he was devoted to pastoral leadership as well as music. Roots, his CD, demonstrated his ability to reach a diverse audience while being faithful to his faith. It was a daring declaration of his versatility as a preacher and a musician. Its innovative blend of gospel's traditional components with contemporary influences earned it high praise from critics. Beyond its musical merits, The Best of Both Worlds served as an effective ministry. This album was a hit with gospel music veterans and new worshipers alike, thanks to Jenkins's profound theological observations and stirring lyrics which were interwoven throughout. The intention behind Jenkins's first album, Awesome, features this song as its lead single, which is to inspire and draw listeners closer to their religion. The gospel music community went wild for it after hearing the powerful yet simple lyrics that extol God's glory and faithfulness. Thanks to its infectious composition and uplifting melody, Awesome became a smashing success right away. A contemporary gospel hit, the song's message of thanksgiving resonated with Christian groups. On top to touching people's hearts, Awesome dominated the Christian music charts, peaking at #1 on Billboard. The gospel community wasn't the only one to hear it. Word got out and it kept getting played in Christian music circles. Acknowledgement gospel radio stations, worship teams, and churches nationwide loved the song for its international appeal and emphasis on God's attributes. Awesome's popularity was evident not just in its chart performance, but also in the numerous accolades and honors bestowed upon Charles Jenkins. Jenkins won numerous awards for the song, which had a significant influence on the gospel music business at various award ceremonies. These accolades acknowledged Jenkins's talent as a gospel music inventor, vocalist, and songwriter. Jenkins was a spiritual leader and brilliant musician because he could compose songs that could unite worshipers in praise and speak to their inner feelings. After the success of Awesome, Jenkins's debut album, he kept making songs that people could relate to. Any Given Sunday 2015 is only one of many albums he has created while reflecting on these topics. Things 2016, featuring singles like War and Grace, demonstrated Jenkins's versatility as a performer by fusing contemporary sounds with traditional gospel components while maintaining a heavy emphasis on messages of hope, faith, and empowerment. People fighting their own personal conflicts found solace in War, another potent anthem. Similar to Awesome, the song's theme of spiritual struggle and triumph struck a chord, demonstrating that Jenkins is capable of creating music that does more than just provide entertainment. His steady stream of spiritually and musically captivating songs earned him a devoted fan following and cemented his position in the gospel music industry. Beyond his hit songs, Charles Jenkins has left an indelible mark on gospel music through his ministry and his ability to bring people together through music. He has never treated gospel music as mere entertainment, rather, it has always been an integral part of his ministry. As an act of worship and a medium for the proclamation of God's love and grace, Jenkins writes songs with the intention of strengthening believers' faith, encouraging their spiritual development, and providing solace to individuals going through tough times. In gospel music, Charles Jenkins has unquestionably made an indelible impression. His commitment to service and his gift for penning songs that resonate with Christians on a profound level. When it comes to contemporary gospel, Jenkins has become an influential figure. Through his celebrity, he has served as a role model for many and a sounding board for aspiring musicians. Both the leadership of Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church and Pastor Charles Jenkins' accomplishments in gospel music have earned him accolades. Many difficulties and personal troubles have also beset him. After the death of a well-known pastor, Charles Jenkins assumed the role of senior pastor of Chicago's Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. He had numerous problems in this role, including maintaining a strong spiritual focus, a prosperous career, and a healthy work-life balance. Becoming senior pastor following the death of the well-known pastor was one of the most challenging things he had to accomplish. A revered leader, civil rights advocate, and spiritual guru to many, Reverend Clay Evans founded the church in 1950. His leadership and impact were widely felt in the community and church, earning him great respect and leaving a gap that was difficult to fill. Jenkins had the unenviable task of continuing Evans's work when he was appointed senior pastor in the year 2000. Successing Reverend Evans was more than simply stepping into a new position. It was also a way to pay tribute to the church's illustrious past and carry on the legacy of a leader who had molded its character for many years. Jenkins felt immense pressure to live up to the high standards set by the church, many of whom had deep personal ties to Reverend Evans. Striking a balance between carrying on the church's traditions and implementing Reverend Evans's vision for its future proved to be quite a problem. Jenkins, looking forward, understood the significance of paying tribute to the past while yet acknowledging that the church must evolve to be pertinent in the contemporary era. Leading a congregation through a period of transition while maintaining his fame in the music industry and the ministry was a balancing act that demanded wisdom, humility, and a clear sense of purpose from him. Many have voiced their disapproval of Charles Jenkins. As a gospel performer and spiritual leader, Jenkins has had to navigate the complications of being in the public eye and the associated high expectations and pressures. Jenkins, as a pastor, has had to handle the unavoidable scrutiny that his personal and professional lives have received from the public. The public could see Pastor Jenkins's every move, including his. By launching new initiatives and increasing the church's outreach, Jenkins sought to modernize the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. Some insiders and outsiders were wary about the church straying too far from its historic beliefs because of these reforms. It can be challenging to steer a church through change when its members are firmly attached to established norms and practices. In addition to updating the churches, his alterations to the church's worship and service formats were met with resistance from some members who were worried about the impact on the congregation's identity as a whole. Jenkins had to be diplomatic and considerate in his dealings with these opposing viewpoints. He was also committed to doing his best to respect the church's heritage while being open to fresh perspectives. Charles Jenkins's private life has also been scrutinized. People looked to him as a pastor for moral guidance and expected him to be more upstanding than other public personalities, even when it came to his personal life. As a spiritual leader, people seldom take an interest in your private life. Keeping a good work-life balance while being closely observed by both his flock and the media was a challenge for Jenkins, as it is for many leaders. No matter how minor an error or controversy may be, it could easily be magnified and condemned. It was difficult for him to display vulnerability or acknowledge the universal hardships because of the public's fixation on his personal life, which imposed pressure on him to meet the expectations expected of a man in his position. In spite of the challenges posed by public scrutiny, Pastor Charles Jenkins has often demonstrated the virtue of vulnerability. Jenkins has a history of choosing humility and a focus on his calling to serve God and his community when faced with criticism. Recognizing that criticism is an inevitable component of the path for anyone seeking to make a difference, he has also been forthright about the difficulty of publicly leading. Putting his critics in their place has been one of Jenkins's most effective methods. He has resolved to refrain from public arguments and defensiveness and instead devote himself wholeheartedly to his ministry and musical endeavors. Jenkins has demonstrated that his purpose is unaffected by the opinions of others or the demands of the present by being faithful to his calling and objectives. In addition to the demands of public life, Jenkins has also had to cope with the difficulties of juggling his own personal and family responsibilities. Even though Jenkins' personal struggles as a spouse, father, preacher, musician, and public figure are mostly unreported, he has surely faced tests of faith and strength throughout his life. Pastor Charles Jenkins has struggled greatly with juggling his professional and personal responsibilities. Jenkins juggled a family life with his hard job. For nearly 20 years, he oversaw a huge congregation, oversaw community outreach initiatives, and encouraged the spiritual development of his churchgoers as the senior pastor of Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. The gospel music business also saw Jenkins rise to fame as a result of his singles Awesome and War Required. He poured a lot of hours into making music, advertising it, and playing live performances. His time and energy were greatly taxed trying to juggle these two massive responsibilities. Jenkins found that juggling his various professional responsibilities with spending time with his family was the most challenging aspect. Long hours, frequent travel, and an endless schedule that leaves little time for leisure are commonplace for pastors and musicians. Members of a spiritual community look on their leaders for constant solace, guidance, and support. The lives of everyone associated with you, including your loved ones, are constantly under scrutiny when you are in the public eye. Charles Jenkins's family's personal lives were constantly under scrutiny due to his dual roles as a gospel singer and pastor. The scrutiny that accompanied his prominent position occasionally placed an excessive amount of pressure on his loved ones to meet the lofty expectations that others had of him as a religious leader. Most people assume that a pastor's family will. Members of spiritual leaders' families may find it challenging to maintain unattainable levels of morality and religion. These norms frequently disregard their humanity and the common challenges that every family encounters. Because everyone is looking at their every move and decision through a new prism, the family may feel uneasy and stressed out by the public attention. Jenkins has likely had to shield his family from this type of public scrutiny and make sure they may live their lives unencumbered by constant judgment because they are famously related to someone. Little is known of Jenkins's private troubles and those of his family. Jenkins, a leader who has spoken out about the importance of faith, has clearly had to draw strength from something as he juggles the responsibilities of his profession with the needs of his family. When Jenkins is going through tough times in his life, he likely finds solace and guidance in his spiritual beliefs. As a musician and pastor, his religion not only sustains him, but it also influences his problem-solving style. Jenkins's resilience in the face of adversity is a testament to his dedication to personal development and progress. Improving his leadership, marital, and parental skills has always been a goal of his. He understands that leading is about more than just giving speeches, it's about modeling for his loved ones and the people he serves the fact that strength is found in being open, honest, and able to grow from adversity. Pastor Charles Jenkins reluctantly decided to resign as head pastor in 2019. For nearly 20 years, Jenkins presided over the flourishing Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago. Not only was this a watershed moment in Jenkins's career, but it was also a trying and emotionally taxing period for the congregation. After seeing his group flourish under his guidance, Jenkins had to make the difficult decision to resign as spiritual leader. Resigning as senior pastor of Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church was a difficult decision for Charles Jenkins. A combination of private, public, and spiritual considerations formed its basis. Jenkins decided it was time to move on from leading the church after nearly 20 years. He wanted to pursue other ambitions in music and ministry. The need for the church to continue developing and changing under new leadership was another factor that Jenkins considered when deciding to step aside. He was aware that the key to an institution's success was often its ability to welcome and accommodate many viewpoints and views. The conviction that led him to depart was that it would be great if Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church had a fresh pastor who could bring new ideas to take the church forward. Because of the deep bonds he had formed with his church family and other acquaintances, Jenkins had to make the tough choice to quit the job he had worked for the better part of his life. He had to make the difficult decision after giving careful consideration to his relationships with the people of the church and the spiritual growth he had guided them through. But he demonstrated humility and leadership qualities by making this choice. He knew that stepping aside is sometimes necessary for the greater welfare of the society. After Pastor Charles Jenkins passed away, Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church was hit hard. The church had been transformed spiritually under Jenkins's guidance, and it had become a shining example of faith in Chicago's fight for social justice and community service. At the church, Jenkins left a legacy that encompassed Charles Jenkins began a new chapter in his life professionally and personally when he left Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church after years of balancing his position as a pastor with his career in gospel music. He was devoted to innovative ministry, which sought to empower the youth of today and tomorrow while also attending to the community's needs through a number of social programs. He was able to devote more time to his passion for music and explore new avenues for success in the industry. He was able to exercise his imagination and work on initiatives outside of the typical ministry sphere as a result of his decision. Additionally, Jenkins was able to devote more time to his family as a result of this shift, something he had been negligent about. Being a preacher, musician, and public person meant that Jenkins had to find a way to balance his time and focus between his work and his loved ones. By stepping down from his position as pastor, he was able to realign his priorities and spend more time with his loved ones. Taking care of himself, his family, and his spouse. Faith can transform individuals, as Jenkins' experience demonstrates. His life demonstrates that challenges are inevitable, but that the way we face them determines our level of development, resilience, and inspiration. His story exemplifies how relying on faith and community can bring about personal and spiritual progress in the face of adversity.